So today, we're diving into the life of Sri Aurobindo, one of modern India's most original thinkers. And his life story? Well, it's a fascinating paradox. It's like a tale of two completely different people living in one body.
I mean, look at this. On one side, you've got the revolutionary, a total firebrand nationalist, right? He's editing these radical journals, even gets arrested in a bomb case, all in the name of political freedom. But then, on the other side, you have the yogi, a mystic, totally withdrawn from the world and Pondicherry, who goes on to develop this deep spiritual philosophy and writes an epic poem that's even longer than the Odyssey. Just, wow.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How does one man become both? How do you possibly get from point A, the revolutionary, to point B, the yogi? It just seems impossible. All right, let's get into it. Let's uncover the journey that connects these two seemingly opposite lives. Now, his story starts in a really unexpected place. You'd think a great Indian nationalist would be steeped in Indian tradition from day one, right? Nope, it's actually the complete opposite. His childhood was deliberately soaked in British culture. His father's whole plan was to kind of erase his Indian roots before he even had a chance to know them. And this timeline here just lays it all out so clearly. He's born in Calcutta, but then at just 7 years old, he's shipped off to England. He doesn't come back for 14 years. And even then, it takes another decade before he just explodes onto the political scene, ready to take on the very empire that raised him. And the irony of his education is just incredible. He was this brilliant student, excelled at Cambridge, mastering Greek, Latin, the whole Western canon. He was basically groomed to be a top official in the colonial government. But then he deliberately fails the final writing test, of all things, just to get out of it. And what's the first thing he does when he gets back to India? He uses that powerful, Western-trained mind to do the exact opposite of what his father wanted. He dives headfirst into Sanskrit, the Vedas, the Gita, rediscovering the very culture he was supposed to forget. And all this rediscovery, it poured right into his politics. He wasn't interested in just a little reform or a few more seats at the table. No way. He called for Purna Swaraj, complete, total, absolute independence. You have to understand, that was a really extreme, radical idea at the time. It immediately made him one of the most hardcore leaders of the freedom movement. His first big mission was to transform an entire nation.
Okay, so he's on this path trying to start a revolution on the outside, but that external revolution, it was about to turn inward. And in the most dramatic way you can imagine, his political career was about to slam into a wall, and that wall was a prison cell. This right here, this is the turning point. 1908, he gets arrested and spends a year in solitary confinement. Now, you'd think that's the end of the story, right? A place designed to crush his revolutionary spirit. But it did the exact opposite. It ignited a whole new kind of revolution. In a wild twist, his prison cell became his ashram, his personal spiritual retreat.
It was right there, in the silence and isolation of that cell, that everything just shifted. He started having these profound spiritual experiences. He began to see that the fight for India's freedom wasn't the end goal. It was just one small part of a much, much bigger mission. The spiritual evolution of all of humanity.
So after he's acquitted, found not guilty, he does something that must have stunned everyone. He just walks away. He leaves politics, leaves British India, and moves to the French territory of Pondicherry for safety. And that was it. That was the definitive end of Aurobindo the politician, and the true beginning of Aurobindo the yogi.
But, his idea of yoga wasn't about escaping the world. It wasn't about finding a quiet cave and meditating forever. That would be too easy. His vision was way more ambitious. It was about fundamentally changing the world, but from the inside out.
And this really gets to the heart of his whole philosophy. He called it integral yoga. The key idea isn't to renounce the world or leave life behind. It's the opposite. It's about inviting a higher divine consciousness down, right into our lives to transform every single piece of our existence. Our bodies, our minds, our emotions, the whole shebang.
He laid it out as a pretty clear 3-step process. Step 1, realize that the divine isn't somewhere out there. It's right here, hidden inside matter itself. Step 2, you ascend in your own consciousness. You reach up to connect with that higher reality. And then step 3, and this is the absolute game changer. You bring that higher consciousness back down to perfect and transform life on Earth. See? The goal was never just to go up and stay there. It was to come back down with the power to change everything.
And this vision, wow, it wasn't just some passing thought. You can see from the sheer volume of his writing, he spent the rest of his life mapping it all out. We're talking about some of the most comprehensive, complex, spiritual books of the 20th century. Works like The Life Divine and his epic poem Savitri, just laying out this monumental vision in mind-blowing detail. So, what does all this mean? What does this incredible journey from revolutionary to yogi ultimately mean for us today? What's the big takeaway from this life of transformation? I think this is Aurobindo's most profound and maybe most challenging idea. He's basically saying that evolution didn't stop with us. Human beings, as we are right now, were not the final product. He saw evolution as a spiritual process that's still going on, and the next step for humanity is a huge leap into a higher, what he called a supermental consciousness. So when you look at it that way, his life wasn't a contradiction at all, was it? It was a progression. The struggle to change a single nation was almost like a training ground for his real mission, helping to evolve all of humanity. He managed to bring together political action, intellectual genius, and deep spiritual realization into one single unified purpose. And his work ultimately proposes this incredible future, a future where the goal isn't to escape to some faraway heaven, but to transform life right here, on this planet. A future where our divine potential isn't just a nice idea, but a lived, breathing reality expressed in everything we do. And so, Aurobindo's life, this journey from a prison cell to a whole new philosophy for humanity, it leaves us with this really powerful question, a question for us to think about for ourselves and for our collective future. What is our next step in evolution?